Rylan drifted alone in the silent stretch of space near the forbidden war zone, his small salvage ship moving slowly between broken satellites and frozen wreckage. The region was known as a graveyard of fleets. Most pilots avoided it. Patrols from rival empires sometimes crossed here, and anyone caught scavenging could disappear without a trace. But Rylan had debts, and dangerous places often hid the most valuable scraps. His scanners hummed softly as they searched through the darkness. Most signals were dead metal, long stripped of power. Then a faint pulse flickered across his console. It was weak, irregular, and definitely artificial. He frowned and adjusted the filters. The signal repeated, a quiet cry in the emptiness. He guided the ship toward it. The source came into view as a small escape pod tumbling slowly through space. Its surface was scorched and cracked. One of its thrusters hung loose, and a thin trail of frozen vapor leaked from a fracture along the side. The markings on the hull were unfamiliar but sharp and elegant, etched in a style he had only seen in warning briefings. His chest tightened. The symbol belonged to the Verethi Empire. Stories about the Verethi traveled far. They were conquerors known for their cold efficiency and advanced weapons. Human colonies near their borders lived in constant fear. Rylan should have turned away. Salvaging a Verethi pod could be seen as interference. If a patrol found him with it, they would not ask questions. The signal pulsed again, weaker this time. He stared at the pod through the viewport. Inside that shattered shell was a living being, fading in the dark. His fingers hovered over the controls. Every rule of survival told him to leave. But another thought rose louder in his mind. If he drifted away now, he would carry the memory of that fading signal for the rest of his life. Rylan sighed and steered his ship closer. Mechanical arms extended and gently caught the spinning pod. He pulled it into the cargo bay and sealed the airlock. Warning lights blinked across his console as foreign systems reacted to the change in pressure. He grabbed a toolkit and stepped into the bay. The pod's hatch was jammed. He worked quickly, cutting through the warped metal while the pod's life signs flickered on his wrist display. Each second felt heavy. At last, the hatch fell open with a dull clang. Inside lay a figure strapped into a narrow seat. The alien woman's skin shimmered faintly under the emergency lights, a pale silver tone marked by dark lines that traced her arms and neck. Her breathing was shallow. A thin stream of dark blood floated in the air, escaping from a wound along her side. Rylan moved carefully, releasing the restraints and lifting her out. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her to the small med bay and placed her on the table. The scanner swept over her body, projecting unfamiliar readings. He did not understand most of it, but the red alerts were clear enough. He sealed the wound with a medical gel and attached a universal stabilizer. The machine beeped uncertainly, struggling to interpret alien biology. He adjusted the settings by instinct and experience, watching the rhythm of her breathing slowly steady. For a moment he allowed himself to relax. Her eyes snapped open. They were a deep glowing violet, sharp and focused despite her condition. She moved faster than he thought possible, her hand gripping his wrist with surprising strength. He froze, meeting her gaze.
"You will regret saving me,"
she said. Her voice was low and clear, her words shaped by a translator implant that carried a faint metallic echo. There was no gratitude in her tone, only certainty. Rylan gently pulled his wrist free. "Maybe," he replied. "But you were dying." She studied his face as if searching for a hidden motive. "My people will come," she continued. "They will track this pod. Anyone who shelters me becomes their enemy. I'm already in a war zone," he said with a small shrug. "One more enemy doesn't change much." A flicker of confusion crossed her expression. She released him and tried to sit up, but pain forced her back down. He adjusted the stabilizer and stepped away, giving her space. The ship's alarm suddenly chimed from the cockpit. Rylan cursed under his breath and rushed to the controls. 3 Varethi scout ships had entered the edge of the sector. Their scanning beams swept methodically through the wreckage, moving closer with each pass. He glanced back toward the medbay. The alien woman had followed him, leaning against the doorway despite her injury. Her eyes narrowed when she saw the display. "They are searching for me," she said quietly. "You must abandon this ship and flee in your pod. It is your only chance." He shook his head. "Not happening." Her gaze hardened.
Human, you do not understand. They will tear this vessel apart.
"Then we won't be here when they arrive," he replied. His fingers danced across the console as he powered down non-essential systems. The ship dimmed, blending into the cold debris field. He guided it slowly into the shadow of a massive broken cruiser, its shattered hull forming a jagged cave. The scout ships moved closer. Their scans brushed past his hiding place, lingering for a tense moment. Rylan held his breath. The alien woman stood silent beside him, her posture rigid. One of the scouts changed course, heading directly toward them. She closed her eyes. "It is over." Rylan's mind raced. He rerouted power to a cluster of old salvage drones stored in the cargo bay. With a quick command, he launched them in the opposite direction. The drones ignited their engines at full thrust, flaring brightly on the scanners. The scout ships reacted instantly, turning to pursue the sudden burst of activity. Their beams shifted away from his hiding place. Rylan did not wait. He eased the ship out from the cruiser's shadow and accelerated quietly in the other direction. The wreckage swallowed them once more. Only when the scouts vanished from the display did he allow himself to breathe again. The alien woman stared at him. Something in her expression had softened, though her voice remained steady.
You are reckless, she said, and yet...
Effective. He offered a tired smile. I get by. Silence settled between them as the ship glided deeper into the debris field. Outside, the graveyard of metal stretched endlessly, lit by distant stars. Inside, the hum of the engines felt almost peaceful. She turned her gaze to the viewport. You should still leave me, she murmured. My survival will bring danger to your kind. Danger's been around a long time, he said. Doesn't mean we stop helping each other. She looked at him again, studying the calm certainty in his face. For the first time since awakening, her grip on fear seemed to loosen. The ship slipped quietly through the darkness, carrying them away from the searching scouts. In the vast silence of space, an unlikely alliance had begun. Fragile and uncertain, and though her warning lingered in the air between them, the human pilot felt no regret as he set a new course into the unknown. Rylan kept the ship steady as they drifted deeper into the asteroid belt, its jagged rocks forming natural cover from prying sensors. The alien woman sat silently in the medbay, her violet eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance. Despite the calm exterior, he could feel the tension radiating from her like a live wire. He had named her Alara after the glyphs on the pod, though she had not confirmed the name. She said nothing, but the occasional flick of her eyes betrayed a mind constantly analyzing, judging, waiting. The first days were quiet, almost painfully so. Rylan went about routine repairs and inventory checks, occasionally glancing at her. She refused to eat much, and her body seemed to reject the limited rations he offered. Her species' biology was alien even to him, and though his experience with diverse humans and minor alien species had been broad, Alara's physiology remained a mystery. Her injuries were healing, but slowly, almost deliberately, as if her body refused to fully recover while in his care. Why do you stay with me? She finally asked one evening, her voice soft and sharp all at once.
He shrugged, wiping grease from his hands.
You were dying out there. I didn't like the idea of leaving someone to die if I could help. Doesn't mean I trust you. She regarded him quietly, her expression unreadable. You could be killed. My enemies will find you. Humans are fragile. You do not understand the stakes.
Maybe I don't, he admitted, but I know what it means to do nothing.
That choice would haunt me forever. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she leaned back, finally allowing herself to look at him fully.
You are stubborn.
Rylan smirked faintly. Some call it reckless. Her lips quirked in a faint approximation of a smile, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Recklessness often leads to death. The days passed, and Rylan managed to restore most of the ship's functions. Communications were repaired, but he kept the long-range transmitters off. Broadcasting a signal would be reckless. Any nearby patrols could triangulate their position. He focused on life support, the medbay, and the engines. Meanwhile, Alara began to move more freely. Though she did not yet speak much, her presence grew more active. She wandered the ship, examining panels, touching surfaces lightly, almost as if mapping everything with her senses alone. It was on the 5th day that the first message appeared. The small console in the cockpit blinked with a transmission attempt. It was encrypted, unfamiliar, and clearly from her people.
Rylan frowned. This is not good, he muttered aloud.
Alara entered the cockpit silently. It is a tracker, she said. They know where I am. Any attempt to transmit will lead them to you.
Then we won't transmit, he said.
We'll hide, and we'll figure out a way around it. She shook her head. They do not forgive mistakes. Ooh. If we are discovered, they will destroy everything around us. You are human.
You do not understand their capacity for vengeance. I understand enough to know we can't run forever, Rylan replied.
Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the quiet between them was thick with tension. Then she turned and walked back toward the medbay.
Perhaps I misjudged you,
she muttered under her breath, though not so quietly that he didn't hear. Later that day, a patrol ship appeared on the edge of their sensors. It moved silently, its sleek silhouette designed for speed and tracking. Rylan's heart began to race. "We've got company," he whispered. Alara studied the display, her gaze sharp and calculating.
They are too fast for us to outrun in open space. We must create a diversion or we will be caught.
Rylan nodded, already thinking through possibilities. "I have a few salvage drones still in storage," he said. "If we use them right, we can lure them away." She watched him work in silence, her fingers lightly brushing the console panels, analyzing his every move. He deployed the drones, each one equipped with small thrusters and reflective surfaces. They shot out into the void like tiny comets, creating multiple heat signatures and motion patterns. The patrol ship followed, scanning, misjudging their position. Rylan guided the ship through a tight cluster of asteroids. He could feel Alara tense beside him, her hands gripping the control panel for balance. The patrol ship fired briefly, plasma beams cutting through the darkness, but the rocks absorbed most of the shots. Finally, the enemy ship changed course to chase the drones, disappearing behind a dense field of space debris. They exhaled together in the cockpit, relief mixed with exhaustion.
"Impressive," Alara admitted quietly. "You did not hesitate."
Most humans would have panicked. Rylan shrugged, rubbing the back of his neck.
Instinct, experience.
Probably a little bit of stubbornness. For the first time since the rescue, she seemed almost relaxed, leaning back in her seat. "You are unlike any human I have known," she said. He smiled faintly, a small warmth spreading through him.
"Most humans would have left you out there. I couldn't do that."
The next day, Alara began to share pieces of her story. She spoke cautiously at first, offering only fragments. Her people were not merely soldiers. They were leaders, strategists, individuals who shaped empires and decided fates. She had discovered a plan to wipe out certain human colonies, a plan so cruel that she could not allow it to continue. Her decision to flee had made her a traitor in the eyes of her own people. Rylan listened quietly, absorbing the information.
"So, helping you isn't just dangerous," he said. "It's strategic."
"Yes," she admitted, "but you still do not understand fully."
My survival endangers your species. The Empire will not stop until I am returned. Or until everyone near me is destroyed.
He met her gaze steadily. Then we make sure that doesn't happen.
Together. Her lips parted slightly in surprise, but she said nothing. Instead, she returned to the medbay, leaving Rylan with his thoughts. He spent the next few hours planning their next move. Hiding indefinitely was not a solution. They needed allies, someone who could help them interpret the data she carried and expose her empire's plans. But reaching the nearest council world meant passing through heavily patrolled systems. The risk was enormous. The following days were filled with cautious travel, small skirmishes, and quiet moments that slowly built trust between them. Rylan found himself learning to read her subtle signals, the tilt of her head, the tension in her shoulders, the flicker in her glowing eyes. Each gesture told him more than words could, and Ayara, in turn, began to recognize his unyielding determination, his refusal to abandon anyone in need, even at great personal risk.
It was on the 10th day, while navigating a dense asteroid cluster, that they first encountered a direct threat to their lives.
A band of mercenary ships hired by unknown parties emerged from behind massive rocks, cutting off their escape. Plasma fire lit the void, and Rylan's ship rocked under the impacts.
"Take the medbay!" Aylara shouted, surprising him with her commanding tone. "I will guide you through the debris. Trust me."
He hesitated only a moment before following her instructions, using a combination of thruster bursts, precise maneuvers, and quick thinking. He navigated the ship through a maze of asteroids while Aylara coordinated his movements, her knowledge of tactics astonishing. For the first time, he realized that her warnings were not just about threat. They were about preparation, strategy, and survival. By sheer luck and skill, they emerged unscathed, though the ship had sustained minor damage. They floated silently, the void around them calm once more. Rylan exhaled, his body trembling slightly. "I don't know if I'd have made it without you." She shook her head, her expression unreadable. "You would have found a way. Humans are unpredictable in ways that can be useful. But do not think this proves anything."
"The danger is not over. The Empire is relentless."
Rylan smiled faintly, feeling a bond forming despite the tension and warnings. "Then we face it together." For the first time, Aylara allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was not trust, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. They were no longer just rescuer and rescued. They were partners, linked by necessity, strategy, and the strange spark of mutual respect. As they continued through the belt, moving quietly among the jagged rocks, Rylan felt a sense of purpose he had never known. He had saved a life, yes, but in doing so, he had stepped into a war far larger than himself, and he would not regret it. Not now, not ever. Even as Aylara's warning echoed in his mind, he knew one thing with certainty. Some acts of humanity were stronger than fear, stronger than caution, and sometimes stronger than even the greatest empires in the galaxy. Rylan adjusted the ship's trajectory as the asteroid belt gave way to a dark, barren system, a forgotten border world few ships dared to approach. The silence of space outside was almost deafening, broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional warning beep from the sensors. He glanced at Aylara, who was sitting quietly in the cockpit, her violet eyes scanning the display with unrelenting focus. The tension that had once kept them apart had now transformed into something more complex, a shared understanding that their survival depended on cooperation and trust, even if neither fully admitted it. The encrypted data she carried weighed heavily on both of them. It contained fragments of the Varethi Empire's plans, evidence of targeted attacks on human colonies, and strategic details that could spark a rebellion if delivered to the Galactic Council. Every jump through the void risked interception. They had evaded scouts and mercenaries, but Rylan knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire focused its full attention on them.
Are we close? He asked, trying to keep his voice calm, though tension crept in.
Alara's gaze did not leave the display. The Council station is within reach, but the path is heavily monitored.
We will need to be careful. Every system we cross increases the likelihood of detection.
Rylan nodded, gripping the controls.
I've got a plan, but it's risky.
We may have to land on the surface of the frontier world nearby. It's rough, but it could buy us time.
She studied him for a long moment. A surface landing will expose us to new dangers.
The planet is not uninhabited. You may find yourself fighting not just the Empire, but whoever lives there as well.
Then we fight, he said simply. His voice carried the same calm determination that had saved them more than once before.
Alara's eyes flickered, a mix of surprise and something else. Respect, perhaps, though she would never admit it aloud. As they approached the planet, the atmosphere came into view, a dull orange haze covering jagged terrain with canyons deep enough to swallow entire ships. Rylan skillfully maneuvered the vessel, aiming for a narrow plateau that jutted out above a series of ravines. Alara guided him, her instructions precise and calm, showing a knowledge of tactics he had never expected. The landing was rough, but they made it intact. The ship trembled as it touched the rocky surface, dust clouds rising and drifting in the thin atmosphere. Rylan immediately set up temporary defenses, scanning for threats while Alara moved to the medbay to check her own injuries and recover what little energy she could. They didn't have long to rest. Within hours, the Empire's scouts had tracked their trail and began descending onto the planet's surface. They were fast, lethal, and unyielding. Rylan scanned the terrain, noting the positions of hostile units. The plateau was defensible, but only if they moved with precision.
Listen, Alara said, stepping beside him, her posture commanding. We cannot win by brute force.
We must use strategy. I will direct our movements.
You follow my lead? Trust me. He glanced at her, heart steady but mind alert. I trust you as far as your plans make sense. She nodded once, accepting the slight jab, and immediately began issuing instructions. Using natural rock formations as cover, they set traps, created false trails, and prepared ambush points.
Alara's mind worked faster than Rylan had ever seen.
She could predict enemy movements, anticipate reactions, and adjust tactics in real time. For someone he barely knew days ago, her leadership was astonishing. When the scouts finally moved in, they were met with unexpected resistance. Rylan used the ship's remaining energy weapons, improvised traps, and quick maneuvers to hold them off. Alara coordinated each strike, directing Rylan to hit weak points and avoid a direct confrontation. The skirmish lasted hours, but they managed to repel the first wave. Afterward, they took a moment to catch their breath. Rylan leaned against the ship, bruised and tired, but his spirit remained unbroken. Alara, however, stared at the horizon with a grim expression.
You could have been killed, she said quietly.
The Empire is relentless. My presence brings danger wherever I go.
Perhaps you will regret this. Rylan shook his head, exhaustion etched on his face.
Not once. I don't regret helping you, Alara.
And I won't start now. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time the anger, the warning, and the coldness she had carried since awakening began to shift. You are remarkable, she admitted, though the words were careful, almost reluctant. The night on the frontier world brought silence, broken only by the wind whistling through jagged rock formations. They shared a small meal, mostly preserved rations and recycled water, and discussed their next steps. Alara revealed more of her past, of the internal struggle within the Varethi Empire, of the atrocities she had seen and the impossible choices she had faced. You do not understand, she said, eyes distant.
My entire species has been taught that strength comes from control and fear. Compassion is weakness.
And yet, here I am, relying on a human for survival.
Rylan smiled faintly. Maybe strength isn't about control or fear.
Maybe it's about knowing when to help, even when it's dangerous. She remained silent, contemplating the words. Slowly, the tension between them softened, replaced by an unspoken alliance, deeper than either had anticipated. But the respite was short-lived. Days later, another threat arrived. The Varethi Empire had deployed a hunter squad, elite warriors with advanced tracking tech. They moved fast, cutting off potential escape routes. Rylan realized that their survival depended not just on fighting, but on outthinking their pursuers. Aelara worked tirelessly, analyzing data and predicting enemy movements. One evening, as they plotted a new route through the canyon systems, Aelara paused, her expression troubled.
We may not survive if we continue as we are.
They will find us, and if they do, it will mean death, not just for us, but for anyone nearby who helps.
Rylan placed a hand on the console, looking at her steadily. Then we change the game. We don't just run.
We force them to react to us. We make them play on our terms. Ooh. Her eyes widened slightly. You are fearless, or foolish. Or foolish. Perhaps both.
He grinned faintly.
Maybe, but it works. The next day, using a combination of guerrilla tactics, careful planning, and quick improvisation, they led the hunters on a chase through the canyon network. Rylan piloted the ship in ways that tested every limit, using narrow passages, rock overhangs, and sudden bursts of speed to stay just out of reach. Aelara coordinated strikes, set ambush points, and used the terrain to their advantage. Hours of relentless pursuit turned into days. Exhaustion crept in, but their bond grew stronger. Aelara began to rely on Rylan's instincts as much as he relied on her tactical mind. They moved as a single unit, each anticipating the other's next move. Finally, after a narrow escape through a canyon that ended in a natural cliffside jump, they paused. The hunters had been left far behind, forced to retreat as their tech malfunctioned in the harsh environment. Rylan slumped in his seat, wiping sweat and grime from his face. "You did well," Aelara said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken admiration. "You, make difficult choices and face danger without hesitation. Humans, you are not what I expected." Rylan smiled faintly, exhausted but steady. "And you're not what I expected either. But we make a good team." She studied him, her violet eyes searching his face. Perhaps saving me was not a mistake after all." He chuckled softly. "I never doubted it." Not for a second. The frontier world faded behind them as they plotted their next move toward the Galactic Council station. Every jump through space, every encounter with danger reminded them that survival depended on more than skill. It depended on trust, strategy, and the courage to act when the odds seemed impossible. And as the distant stars stretched before them, both Rylan and Aelara knew the Empire would not give up. Their final confrontation was approaching, and with it, the choice to face an unstoppable force together, or be consumed by it. For the first time, they were no longer just hunter and hunted. They were partners, bound by necessity, by respect, and by the fragile spark of trust that had grown between them. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unforgiving, but for the first time, they felt a measure of hope, the kind that comes from knowing you are not facing the darkness alone. And in the quiet moments between jumps, Rylan allowed himself to believe that some acts of humanity were stronger than fear, stronger than caution, and perhaps even stronger than the greatest empires in existence. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, glittering cold and distant. Rylan guided the ship through the final stretch toward the Galactic Council station, the encrypted data secured safely aboard, though its weight pressed on both of them. Alara sat beside him, silent for the first time in days, her gaze fixed on the glowing display, her violet eyes reflecting the distant lights of the station.
"This is it," Rylan said quietly, not looking at her. "One more jump, and we're there. The Council will see the truth." Alara nodded, though her expression was tense. "It will not be simple. The Empire knows we are coming. They will do everything in their power to stop us. They will not surrender willingly."
"I wouldn't expect them to," Rylan replied. "We'll just have to be smarter." They made the jump together, the ship shivering as it crossed the warp tunnel, emerging on the edge of the Council's jurisdiction.
The station loomed ahead, massive and gleaming, surrounded by a field of protective satellites and defensive arrays. Even from a distance, the Council's presence was formidable, a bastion of order and law amid the chaos of the galaxy. Rylan activated the communication channels, but before he could transmit the data, an alert blinked on the console. Imperial ships had arrived, blocking the path. Their numbers were overwhelming, and their weapons charged. The Varethi Empire had anticipated their move, and now a final confrontation was inevitable. Alara stood abruptly, her posture commanding, her eyes glowing with determination.
"We cannot let them reach the Council. The data must be delivered."
"I will fight. Do not underestimate me."
Rylan shook his head.
"We fight together."
"I'm not letting you face this alone." Her expression softened for the briefest moment, a flicker of vulnerability that vanished as quickly as it came. "Then we must be precise. Every action counts. One mistake, and all is lost." The first wave of Imperial ships advanced, plasma beams cutting through the void. Ryland's ship weaved between debris and satellites, using every trick they had learned in the past weeks. Alara directed his movements, predicting enemy patterns and guiding him toward weak points in their formation. Together they moved like a single entity, anticipating each other's actions with uncanny accuracy. One of the larger Imperial vessels began targeting the Council station directly, its weapons charging for a devastating strike.
Alara's eyes widened.
"If that ship fires, the Council will be destroyed and the galaxy will lose any chance to stop the Empire. We must disable it."
"I have an idea, but it's risky." He guided the ship closer to the massive vessel, dodging its defensive fire. Using the ship's remaining energy reserves, he initiated an overload in the vessel's systems, exploiting a flaw Alara had identified. The ship shuddered violently as systems sparked and alarms blared. The Imperial ship spiraled out of control, careening into the debris field with a deafening explosion. Alara's eyes glimmered with relief, but the victory was fleeting. More ships were closing in, relentless and precise. Rylan realized that their only chance was to use the station itself as a shield while transmitting the data. He maneuvered the ship into the station's protective array, using its defensive fields to block the worst of the attacks. "This is it," Alara said, her voice calm but firm. "Transmit the data now." Rylan activated the secure uplink, sending the encrypted files to the Council's mainframe. The data streamed across the network, exposing the Empire's plans, their targeted attacks on human colonies, and evidence of the atrocities committed. Lights flashed across the Council station as alarms went off, but the transmission was complete. The galaxy would know the truth. The Empire, however, was not finished. A wave of fighters and cruisers descended upon them, intent on annihilation. Alara turned to Rylan, her expression resolute. "We may not survive this." "Be ready." "I'm ready," he replied, his voice steady. "But we're not giving up." They fought side by side, weaving through enemy fire, their movements coordinated and precise. Alara's combat skill was unparalleled, and Rylan's improvisation kept them alive. Together, they destroyed ship after ship, turning the Empire's own strategy against them. The battle raged, but their determination never wavered. At the climax of the fight, the largest Imperial ship prepared a final strike aimed directly at the Council Station. Elara grabbed the controls from Rylan.
I can stop this, she said, but it will put me at risk.
You must survive. Not without you, Rylan said firmly. She hesitated, then nodded.
Very well. Trust me.
Using a combination of her ship's systems and Rylan's guidance, Elara initiated a risky maneuver that redirected the ship's energy into the enemy vessel's core. A massive explosion rocked the field, destroying the Imperial ship and disabling the rest of their formation. The Council Station remained unharmed. Rylan stared at her, awe and concern mixing in his gaze.
You did it!
Iolara's breathing was heavy, but she smiled faintly, a rare expression of relief. We did it together.
I underestimated humanity. Perhaps saving me was not a mistake after all. The Council's defenses activated fully, sending patrols to secure the area. The data was now in their hands, and the Empire's plans were exposed for all to see. The Varethi fleet retreated, their control weakened by the unexpected rebellion sparked by the leaked information. Rylan and Elara floated quietly in the aftermath. The stars outside calm once more. They had survived, not just by skill, but by trust, cooperation, and the willingness to act even when fear was overwhelming. Elara turned to him, her violet eyes softening.
You never regretted saving me, did you? Never, he replied simply. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it.
The warning that had haunted her since awakening, the certainty that helping her would bring only ruin, had been proven wrong. Humanity, with its stubborn determination and compassion, had altered the course of an empire. Together they watched as council ships secured the area, bringing order to the chaos. Elara had exposed the truth, and Rylan had ensured it reached those who could act. The galaxy was far from safe, but a single act of courage had shifted the balance, showing that even in the vast, indifferent void of space, humanity could make a difference. As they prepared to leave the Council Station, Rylan looked at Elara, a faint smile tugging at his lips. So, what now? She studied him, her expression thoughtful. Now we ensure this truth spreads, and perhaps we find a way to rebuild what has been destroyed. He nodded. Then we do it together. And in that moment, floating among the stars, both human and alien knew that the galaxy had changed, not because of armies or weapons, but because of one human's choice to act with compassion, one alien's willingness to trust, and the courage it took to face impossible odds. The Empire's shadow would remain, but it was no longer absolute. Elara and Rylan had proven that even the smallest act of humanity could ignite change across worlds. They had survived the darkness not by avoiding it, but by standing against it together. And as they set a course for the next frontier, neither would look back, for the past had been changed, and the future awaited them, full of challenges, hope, and the quiet certainty that courage and trust could conquer even the greatest fear.